I have the deepest appreciation for all who have served or are currently serving our great country. And I'm incredibly proud of the work being done by the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. Although NVMM is based in Columbus, its reach is national, telling the history and stories of veterans from all branches of service across America. It's a place of inspiration, remembrance, and learning. It offers a unique experience you can't find anywhere else. Most importantly, it gives a voice to every man and woman who answered the call of service to our country. Coming here helps me and my family better understand and honor the journeys and sacrifices of America's veterans. One of the many things I appreciate is that the museum and memorial helps further the appreciation we have for our veterans, no matter our age. I encourage you to join me by investing in the museum's important mission as a corporate philanthropic partner and personally as a member. Together, we can celebrate and preserve the legacies of our American heroes.
This Veterans Day with a heart full of gratitude and pride. I can say it's been an honor and a privilege to have served in uniform, and I salute each and every one of you for your dedication to our great nation. Veterans are the embodiment of courage and sacrifice, and it is with such respect and admiration that each Veterans Day, Americans have the chance to say a heartfelt thank you. Thank you for answering the call to duty, for your selfless service to our country, and for preserving the freedoms and liberties we hold dear. Here at Optum, we're humbled and we're honored to serve our nation's heroes, and I'm excited to announce the launch of a new Veterans Care Hub, which is a one-stop resource that empowers and supports the health journeys of veterans, their families, and caregivers. I want to offer my congratulations to the National Veterans Memorial Museum on this milestone 5th anniversary and 5 years of networking, empowering, and providing opportunities for veterans. While this organization pays tribute to the important history of our nation's veterans, it is your dedication to honoring, connecting, inspiring, and educating, thus shaping both the present and the future of our veterans and their families. That is truly making a remarkable impact. It is vital that we tend to our veteran and military community with a whole person model of care, meaning not just physically, but also mentally, spiritually, financially, and vocationally. I commend you for making this a reality by creating a much needed hub of support, by offering a variety of resilience and wellness programs through partnerships with local VA and Ohio State University. There is truly no act more humble and more noble than one of service to others. As many of us who have worn the cloth of our nation realize, serving others doesn't simply end once we transition to civilian life. By continuing to serve our communities, veterans utilize a valuable experience, perspective, and skills gained from military service in ways that contribute to society and promotes positive change. There is no way to adequately thank each and every veteran or service member for the breadth of their service to this great nation. But I sincerely hope that I will be one of many, many people to say thank you, not just today, but every day. Wishing a very happy Veterans Day to all of my fellow veterans. Serving together, honored to serve.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the posting of our national colors and remain standing for the playing of our national anthem by the 338th Army Band.
Mark time. March. Group. Halt. Left. Base. Post. The colors. Present. Arms. Left. Base. Forward. March. Left. Left. Left.
Please take your seats. And now I'd like to welcome Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Whiteman from the 121st Air Refueling Wing, Ohio Air National Guard, 178th Wing, for our vocation.
Will you join me as we pray? Oh God in heaven, we ask your presence with us here during this 11 o'clock hour on this 11th day of the 11th month, as we join countless other Americans in honoring all veterans who've served our nation's defense. During this ceremony, we ask, Lord, that you would bring to our minds the figures on the tomb of the unknowns: peace, victory, and valor. Valor, a quality that you've given to all whom we honor here today. Victory, which we acknowledge only comes through you. And peace, that we all long for. Father, we ask your protection for those who today stand in defense of our nation, here and abroad. Bless their families as they endure separation. And we would ask that you would be honored by all that we do and say here today, and we will give you thanks as we forever honor. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Distinguished guests, fellow veterans, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bill Butler. I'm the Chief of Staff here at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. I'm also a 27-year active duty retired Army veteran. And on behalf of our President and CEO, Lieutenant General Mike Farragut, I would just like to welcome everybody and thank you for joining us here at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. Just 2 weeks ago, we celebrated our 5-year anniversary. It's hard to believe that 5 years ago, we had a grand opening ceremony across the street on a cold, rainy, blustery day, and we were fortunate to have General Colin Powell as our guest speaker. And I would invite all of you as you leave, if you go through downstairs and out the group exit, we've installed a new impact hallway. And it highlights the tremendous support we have from our sponsors, but more importantly, it also provides testimonials from veterans and family members and members of the community about the impact that the programs, the events, the ceremonies that we have here at the museum provide. And as you go out the exit, right at the group entrance where the benches are, if you look to your left, there's a collage of photos, and it's got 900 photos of all the different events and programs and ceremonies and activities that we've provided here over the past 5 years. And there is a lot of stuff that we have accomplished. And we've accomplished it because of the incredible support that many of you provide us. So at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns fell silent on the battlefields that ravaged Europe. It was supposed to be the war to end all wars, and it was known as the Great War. It ended the bloodiest conflict the world had known at that point in time. And since 1918, people around the world continue to commemorate the service and sacrifice of veterans and their families. Today, we will do the same and hear from some amazing veterans with their own stories of service. Please join me in welcoming our founding president and CEO, Lieutenant General Mike Farrader. He served in our Army for 35 years, a life dedicated to our country. He's a veteran of Mogadishu, Somalia in 1993, and a veteran of 3 tours of combat in Iraq. He also lived all over the world. His last assignment in the Army was as the commanding general of Installation Management Command, and he commanded all the military bases in the Army around the world. He's an inductee in 2021 into both the Army Ranger Hall of Fame and the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame. Please welcome Lieutenant General Mike Farrader.
Thank you, Bill, and Chaplain Tom, thank you for your great words. And it was actually on this date in 1921 when the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier was dedicated. So this day comes around and around and around. Well, it's a great day to be a veteran, and it's a great day to be here in the standing room only Great Hall of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. It's a great day to be in Columbus, Ohio, here at the National Veterans Memorial Museum, and I really want to thank you all for coming. And I do want to recognize a few very special people. Are there any Gold Star family members here? Would you mind standing if you are? We consider our Gold Star family members, those who gave the ultimate sacrifice by way of a loved one, our most precious folks. Let's give Gold Star family members a round of applause and very much respect. And then to our board members, I see John Boyer here from Nationwide. Are there any other board members so I can brag on you? But we have an amazing board, and actually on Monday we'll do our last of this World Series week. We used to call this Super Bowl week, and we run about 14 days straight of speaking engagements around here and all around the country, Colorado Springs and Las Vegas in the last 10 days. So as we wrap up that board and look to the future, let me thank our board members, their corporations and companies. Let me thank our first responders. Are there first responders here? Would you raise your hand? And stand up. There you go. Come on, bro. Stand up. There we go. Active duty members, guard members, and reserve. Can you raise your hand? Can you stand up? I do want to recognize our guest speaker, keynote speaker, Jay Anderson, and his amazing family here in the front row. Let's give them a big round of applause also. If you're a member of the NVMM, would you raise your hand? Thanks. Put them down. If you're going to be a member before you leave today, raise your hand. I'm all for it. There you go. I probably should recognize my 3 grandkids standing over there. Yay. But here's the real deal. This is a family. This whole thing's a family. So show your hands if you are a veteran. Put them down. Actually, let's do it this way real quick. So if you're a veteran, stand up. Don't move. If your dad was a veteran, stand up. Or mom, or sister, or brother, or uncle, or a high school coach. Or your kids are now serving or did serve. Look how connected we are. Isn't that amazing? Let's give yourself and all you love a round of applause. That's awesome. Thank you. This may be the last time I should have stand, but who knows what's going to happen next. I want to take a moment and thank my amazing staff who really, most companies, most businesses, the business books tell us that about 17% of the organization does about 80% of the work, but not here at the NVMM. A staff of about 44 do the work of about 150. And please, this whole setup, let's give them a round of applause and getting the word to you. We're a nonprofit, and to date, after 5 years, we barely receive any federal, state, local, Franklin County money. It's due to our donors, and so again, a special thanks to Nationwide and the great work and contributions that you've done and your boss has done. And if you were online right now, you'd be listening to Kurt Walker give his thank you, veterans, and then you'd also hear Lieutenant General Patty Horoho, former Surgeon General of U.S. Army, giving her pitch. And so the team is, together everyone accomplishes more, and thanks to you all, and John, thanks to those who you represent. Since 1973, our country has relied on an all-volunteer force. That's pretty amazing. And in this country, there are still men and women who, for a variety of their own reasons, choose to serve and protect the country. My note says many of today's service members enlisted or joined or were commissioned after 9/11. It's actually most. With a 20-year war, most who are serving knew what they were getting into. And now, when you consider the beginning of this ceremony, we really have, generations of service members, generations of patriots. First of all, we have the cadets that carried the flag in. Let's give Ohio State University cadets. I think they're all sophomores. They were all women, and they all want to be airborne rangers. So we got that going for us. And then you have the band behind me. Let's give the band a giant round of applause. Currently serving. And then we also have the veterans in the hall. To include my first sergeant from Charlie Airborne, 1985. He greeted you with his high-speed, highly patched Harley-Davidson vest. But First Sergeant Enfinger, thanks for being here always, and the leadership and mentorship you gave a young captain in the Arctic in 1985 and 86. So to our NCO Corps, let's give them a round as well. Today's about you and the veterans across the country. A reminder that Memorial Day is about those veterans who we lost in the line of duty during their service. So today we say have a happy Veterans Day, and then we're more solemn in May in the memorial. So today's a happy day. I feel good about that. And because of you, you veterans, you then return to our communities. And I used to be with a group of colonels at Fort Benning, and we would have to give the retirement speech. And we sort of had it on down there, templated. But we would say when you first return to the community, you're going to organize, first your wife's going to have you do, or your spouse is going to have you do all the honeydews. And when that runs out, you're going to organize the kids in the neighborhood and get platoon formations and have them marching, drill and ceremony on the basketball court. And then eventually you're going to say, you know what, I can do much more, and I'm going to. And so it's that infusion of leadership, positive mental attitude, and mentorship that makes a huge difference in all of our communities. You know, our mission is to honor and positively impact the lives of veterans, their families, and our communities through sharing the veteran experience. We share the veteran stories to honor veterans and connect veterans and communities, and then educate students and adults and veterans. You'll see the common threads as you walk through the museum. There are 14 alcoves, the first being A Nation Called, and then the next one being Leaving Home, and then taking the oath of office, and then basic training. A show of hands if you've never walked all the way through the museum. And that's okay that you haven't, because you're here now, and that's what counts. It's amazing and inspiring. And there's also a historic timeline, and which tells the stories from 1775 up until today. And it also highlights an individual who was involved, he or she, and they're not generals, and they're not presidents. And that's what makes America so special. So since opening in 2018, we hit COVID at about 348 members, and now all time we're over 10,000 members. And that's important because then because then we can push the word to you, and you can be our ambassadors to push the word to someone else. And then we continue to grow. Over here, many of you, but not all of you, can see our volunteer wall with 500 service hours, volunteer of the year, 1,000 service hours. And that's the special sauce when you come here, our volunteers, the twinkle in the eye of either a young or older person who tells you a little bit about their story if they were veterans, but then makes it possible for you to understand the experience that you're about to get. We've actually raised more than $33 million through our corporations and individuals in order to continue to build programs. And our idea has always been, build something that impacts lives, and then someone in the corporate world or private world will pony up and they'll say, I want to put my name on that. And so thank to all of you who've assisted us. Honor, connect, inspire, educate. Educate, obviously, it's the youth of the city. We had several hundred in here yesterday. It was teeming. It looked like the Sitka River with salmon swimming upstream most of the time. And as we really feel that in our 5th year, that everyone's getting to understand and know what we do. We also run military to civilian leadership class through the Ohio State University. So you veterans that are in corporations, you can get a leader certification, use your post 9/11 or Montgomery GI Bill, and get 6 credit hours and then get promoted, because often your DHR says you don't have any night school. What have you been doing at nights? And of course you say night patrols in Afghanistan or Iraq or on a ship out at sea. We then built a resilience and wellness program with over 5,500 people participating in wellness classes that include yoga and CrossFit. Last week, CrossFit on the roof, 5K races, and yes, downstairs, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And that's pretty cool, but what's really cool is we see people connecting with each other and having each other's back and making that call when it gets tough at night, and we'll continue that. We've had more than 13 traveling exhibits here. Downstairs now we have a midshipman's journey. But in San Antonio, we have the 20-year war. And it right now is at grunt style, and in a week or two, Andy and team will move it over to USAA. We started with a dream of shop NVMM, find these entrepreneurs, and find a way to help them. And today we have over 80 veteran-owned or operated businesses. So if you can buy everything and clean the shelf, I'll appreciate it. But moreover, those veterans will appreciate it. And then we steadily grown opportunities to share the stories. This is live streaming, but we also have over 380 podcasts, fireside chats, and the like. And I did one in, as I said, in Las Vegas with an amazing, inspiring leader. So we want someone in a vet's home in Tampa or Tacoma who can't physically get here to hear the same stories and the high quality and, of what our veterans bring to our communities. So 2024 is going to be another outstanding year. First of all, it'll be the 80th anniversary of D-Day. So we'll have 3 different exhibits come in. One, the art of World War II Army Air Corps. Number 2 is how our military created this appearance with the fake paratroopers that they dropped that caused the German army. And then the third is experience of art created in World War II with stained glass from Europe. We're also creating a documentary series called Black Ops. It's being done by Triple Nickel Clothing and Apparel in partnership with us. It'll be about a 6-video part thing, and to tell the story of men and women of color who were special operators, and not only how they made things happen, but how they broke some glass ceilings in doing so. So that's just the beginning, so be sure to sign up at nationalvmm.org. Probably 2 things to think about as I wrap up. One is, this evening, not later than 1900, raise your hand if you don't know what that means. Okay. I want you to get on a phone. Actually, but Bill probably would discourage me. I was going to say, everyone stand up with your phone. But by 1900, text a friend who is not with you today, not here, present. Text a buddy, and just text the word, buddy check, happy Veterans Day, how are you? And you'll be surprised how many lives we'll save today of someone who has just needed to hear from you right at the right time. How about that? I don't know, is this your phone up here, Bill? I keep seeing these dogs, I'm thinking, who's sending me pictures of dogs? But here's a big idea. If you go back 6 years, 7 years, and you Google National Veterans Memorial and Museum, do you know what you'll find? Nothing. And if you Google today, Veteran City, USA, do you know what you're going to find? Nothing. So we're going to pull it together, and I see in 2024 and 2025 that Columbus becomes Veteran City, USA. I need your help. The last time I got that reaction from my staff is when I said, we will have a commercial in the Super Bowl. And we did, and we did. So God bless you all. God bless our veterans. This is a special day of celebration, and I look forward to meeting you one by one by one. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Jay Anderson. Jay is a graduate of Miami University and also a graduate with an MBA from the Booth School of Business at the University of Chicago. He was an active duty naval nuclear surface officer on the USS Mississippi, CGN-40, for 5 years, multiple deployments at sea. Since leaving the military, he served in a variety of positions in corporate and hospital settings. Most of his professional career is focused on leading operations and quality assurance in large hospitals like Northwestern Memorial Hospital and here at The Ohio State University's Wexner Medical Center. Given his experience and expertise, he's been teaching a healthcare operations management course at Northwestern University for almost 2 decades. He's been the Chief Operating Officer at The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center since July 2021. He's a great speaker, and we're excited to have him join us today. Please welcome Jay Anderson.
Well, good afternoon. What a true honor to be here today. General Farrader, thank you so much for this invite. Colonel Butler, you do such a wonderful job as you run these operations, and we're so thankful you came to speak to us this last week over at Ohio State, encouraging our veterans there. So what a wonderful, wonderful setting that we have, and let us all continue to enjoy this day. My comments today actually stem from a moment back in 1995. I had the mid-watch standing officer of the deck as we were transiting across the Atlantic. It was one of those transits where we'd gone on ahead of the carrier battle group. We were a nuke. We didn't need an oiler. We didn't need the rest of the battle group with us. We were headed to the Adriatic to relieve Red Crown, which was part of the Operation Sharp Guard that was doing the blockade in the Adriatic off the coast of Bosnia-Herzegovina in that conflict. So this is one of those nights that I was 100% certain I was not going to give a rudder command. I was not going to give an engine order. It would be shocking if we saw a contact. That's what happens in the middle of the Atlantic. So this is a great night to get to know your crew. So about halfway through the watch, I walked out onto the port bridge, and there's my lookout standing there, and his eyes are just wide as can be. He said, "Sir, do you see this?" And I looked down, and we were just kicking off this incredible fluorescent glow as we were activating the kelp driving through the ocean. It was a calm night, green fluorescence flying everywhere, and a moonlit sky across the sea. It was a spectacular evening. And I turned to the young lookout and I said, "All right, lookout, what's your story?" He said, "Well, sir, first thing, I've got 472 days left in the Navy." And I stopped. I said, "All right." I said, "Well, what about the rest?" So he went on to tell me how he enlisted and how he ended up on USS Mississippi. But I was always struck by that first comment. How many of folks, and maybe it was just a Navy thing, I don't know. But in the Navy, everybody knew how many days they had left. We counted them down. They counted them down on toilet paper rolls, on paperclip chains. Now, these were the same guys that would stop you and say, "Sir, will you do my re-enlistment?" But that's neither here nor there. But what I realized was that this time of service, not for all of us, but for many of us, is a season of our life. And actually, it's a season of our life that is not the majority of our life. This season of our life, though, is preparing us for the role that we will perform for the rest of our life, and that's our role as veteran. That's what we're here to celebrate today. When I think about the roles that we have as veterans, it's leveraging the skills that we learn during our time of service. There's a few of them that certainly come to mind: team building, problem solving, dedication, reliability, work ethic, competence, calm under pressure, being mission oriented. These are the things that we learned. Some of it we learned in our training. I learned some as a Naval ROTC down at Miami University. Others of us learned it at the academy. Others of us learned it during basic training or A school. But I'll argue that most of those times, those skills were learned during our experience of service. They're what shaped us. They're what gave us those competencies. And I'll throw out, I think we have two major roles with these things that we've learned. Number one is to go back to the communities that we live in and the communities that we serve, and our job is to continue our mission by serving those in whatever careers and paths that we've chosen to go. It's about continuing that life of service. And the other role that we all have is to serve those of us that during their time of service came back and lack hope and lack an ability, are struggling to come back into society in a way that they feel confident and comfortable, that they can go back to serving a mission in their lives. We need to be able to do both of those things. So I'm going to share a couple of my stories of how I developed those skills. Your stories are your stories. I hope today, hopefully sometime after you do that text, which is a fantastic idea, I hope we all do that today. But I hope you take a moment to reflect on your own stories that created those skills and competencies in you. Some of them will be tough to think about. Others you'll be incredibly proud of. And I hope a few of them make you laugh, because I think we all would agree there were moments that we all did laugh in the service, because that's what happens when you spend that much time together, working that hard together. So my first story is a problem-solving story. So we were at sea, we were down in the Caribbean, we were off the coast of Vieques. And every Navy guy in the room knows the second I said Vieques, that you just thought, oh, you were blowing stuff up. Because that's what you do down in Vieques. Those are the islands where we all have to prove. You don't get to go on deployment, you don't get to go into live fire situations if you can't prove that you can shoot your 5-inch 54 guns. So we've been down there off the coast of Vieques. It had been 2 days of firing exercises. I happened to be the ordnance officer. While I was a Navy nuke and stood watch at the plant, I was also the ordnance officer standing watch in combat and on the bridge. So there we're on the second day of firing. We're actually near the end. I'm up in combat, I've got my headsets on, but I'm not overly active in this particular one because we were getting live fire directions from land, spotters on land, telling our folks where to shoot. So I was really more monitoring, just making sure my guns were performing well. And I hear this quiet whisper in my headset. Ordo, are you online? Yeah? Sir, it's Mount 52. Can you come back here? I looked around, I said, well, can you just tell me what's going on? Sir, it would just be best if you got back here now. You don't need to be told again. So I take the headsets off and I turned to the TAO and I said, sir, I'm just gonna head down, check on the guns while we're in the back half of this exercise. He said, great. So I go back to Mount 52, try to open the hatch, it doesn't move, that's uncommon. So I bang on the door a little bit, it creaks open, my gunner's mate looks at me, opens the door, brings me in, shuts the door. I'm immediately struck by the intense smell of hydraulic fluid, which is not as common as one would like. I was struck there were a unique number of people in the turret that wouldn't normally be there, and there were buckets and rags. Clearly things were not as they were supposed to be. I turned and I looked, and there's my chief. His eyes are really big. He looks at me very seriously. He said, sir, I need to know one thing. How much longer do we have? I said, Chief, we got about 45 minutes. He looks right behind me. He says, okay, we're gonna be okay. I said, could you elaborate just a little bit more of what's going on? He said, sir, end of the day, we'd sprung a couple of hydraulic leaks that we were trying to manage. But what he said, sir, but if you look, as long as we keep that head tank full, and I turn around and there's a ladder, again, not something you often find inside the turret, there's a ladder up and one of my gunner's mates pouring hydraulic fluid into the head tank to keep pressure on the whole system. But what I knew in that moment is this team, we had trained for well over a year for this moment. We had fired these guns so many times. We knew what it could do. We now knew we were outside of the bounds of what it was supposed to be able to do, but we knew well enough as a team that we could get through this. And we did. We trusted each other and we got through it. So went back up, the exercise was fantastic. Everything ends, the captain comes down, he said, Lieutenant, let's go down, we need to encourage the guns, let's head back to Mount 52 and encourage them. I said, well, sir, we've actually all decided to meet up at Mount 51 and to celebrate, and that's what we did. Just embodying the kind of teamwork that happens when you spend time together, that you trust each other, and you worked hard enough to be prepared for those moments that are now outside the bounds of where they're supposed to be. A second skill I learned was how do we stay calm under pressure? Let's agree, in all of our work worlds, we all experience this all the time. I oversee a medical center now. The kind of dramas that I have to experience are things like, hey, the city just hit the water line. We have no water going to our 2,000 beds. That's a problem. Hey, the Red Cross just called. We're not going to get a blood shipment for the next 3 or 4 days. That's a problem. But what you know your team needs during those times is your ability to relax and be calm in the throes of a challenging moment. And I learned that from my mentor down in the nuclear plant. So you'd stand watch, overseeing the plant, but if you're running a nuclear plant, you get drilled all the time. Things like the reactor scrams, a turbine trips, you've got a radioactive spill. This is just what you do if you're running a nuclear plant. And when you're doing that, there's 2 things you do immediately. Number 1, you do your immediate actions, which you have to have memorized and trained. But the second thing you do is you always get on the mic and you call for help. None of us should go through those types of challenges alone. The tendency, though, when you grab the mic, is to let all the anxiety that you're feeling get projected through the mic and echo throughout the ship for everybody else to hear. But what my mentor told me, he said, Jay, when you grab that mic, I want you to pause for 1 second, breathe out, and then when you click down, I want you to sound as bored as you possibly can as you call away the casualty. And so I learned to be the one that sounded like propulsion plant casualty, radioactive spill, in the number 2 engine room, away the RL team. And what I found from those moments is A, I was calmer. I was able to think more clearly about how do we address this particular event. My whole crew was now freed from thinking about the anxiety of the event to focus on what they knew how to do. And everyone that came down to help us showed up with a level of competence and a lack of anxiety. And then I would get these moments as I walked down the hall and folks would be like, Lieutenant, we love when you're on watch. Now, I knew I was a decent watchstander. I knew plenty of my friends that were much better watchstanders than I was. But they'd be like, we love it. Nothing shakes you. Little did they know how anxious I was. But our ability to lead in those times of anxiety, to stay calm, project that to our team so that everyone can be at their best to deal with whatever that event is. These are the kinds of skills that we developed during our time in service. One last story that's an odd story, but I think one is relevant in our current time. And that was we were in an active zone there in the Adriatic. Sarajevo had been under siege. We've been doing airdrops into Sarajevo throughout the course of this period of time. But the forces around Sarajevo were continuing to clinch in, and the conflict, I think was the term, was not turning. And so NATO made the decision that night to do a launch to break the siege around Sarajevo. That night, we were with the Roosevelt Battle Group. They were the one flying the plane missions, and then several of the ships around us were doing Tomahawk launches. We were secondary to the Tomahawk launch, and at the same time, we were the protection for the carrier for anything that would happen that night. So there it was at 2 o'clock in the morning. We're all at general quarters as this event is playing out. We always do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. You're supposed to get a good night's sleep ahead of time. Anyone else able to sleep before those nights? You're better than I was, if you were. So we're there on watch. It was a tense night. You watched all the planes taking off. You watched the Tomahawks being launched. You watched the folks that we were up against had many batteries along the coast of the Adriatic, and they're lighting us up with their fire control radar. And so it was a tense night. Luckily, we didn't get shot at, and we didn't have to take anything in that moment. And so at the end of the day, as a lowly 03 lieutenant, my observation over time was that event actually worked very well, and it seemed to turn the tide of the conflict. And from my position as lieutenant, where my job was to execute the missions that I was assigned to, it was a very successful night. Fast forward now, 10 years later. I'm in Chicago. I'm working for Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I'm leading within that operations and doing one of the things I was trained on during my military times. That was you round. You round and you talk to your teams. The best way to know what's going on is to round with your teams. So I'm down in the emergency room and I'm rounding and I'm talking to one of my security guards. And through the course of the conversation, what I learned was this young man was Serbian. This young man's life had been changed 10 years earlier as he and his family were on the other side of that event. Changed his life completely. And now here we were 10 years later together in a conversation, and we were now aligned to a common mission to help patients and families at their time of need in the new roles that we had taken on. And I tell you the story to say the world's not simple. The world's complicated. Our job's to do that the missions that are in front of us and to do them to the best of our ability and never assume we know exactly how things are going to play out. From that time forward, he and I were on the same team and we were aligned to that mission. It was hard for us to explain how we got to that spot together, but we knew we could go forward. And so I would ask that all of us, as we think about the missions that we're challenged with, is understanding our core mission is to serve our fellow man. And let us find the ways to make sure that we do that well to the best of our ability. Which leads me to the second half of what we do. Yes, we use our skills in our communities. And I'll actually argue there's great evidence that our foundations of military service make us uniquely equipped to be successful as veterans. It's why the leaders of Nike, FedEx, Lockheed Martin, Procter & Gamble, our own Steve Markovich over at Ohio Health, the new president at Ohio State University, President Carter, who will be joining us in January. My head of supply chain over at the Wexner Medical Center. My head of central sterile out of my New Albany surgery center. All come from a military background because those skills that we talked about are now what they've brought to the workplace and allowing them to be successful in what they do. And that's fantastic. But then we also have to step in and say, how do we use these skills not just to advance our communities, but to serve our fellow veterans? A great example, a dear friend that's here, Dr. Jason Souza, is a perfect example of this. Dr. Souza was a 6-year veteran of the U.S. Navy, working within the medical corps, and his mission is to serve our wounded warriors with his surgical gifts. His vision for his military medicine program is that every veteran who's been injured in service to their country deserve the best care this country can provide. He started off providing those services at Walter Reed and realized there were limits of what he could do within that particular medical system. He came to here, he came to Ohio, he came to Columbus, he came to Ohio State and said, we can build a comprehensive program to serve wounded warriors. If you look, since 2001, we've had 53,000 wounded warriors wounded in combat. 2,300 of those are major limb amputees. He's created a program with the skills that he's learned through his time of service, and he's now served over 50 wounded warriors from states all around the country. But he's extending that not just in his own surgical practice. He's now training medical teams in Ukraine. He's training medical teams in the Middle East to take these skills and serve the wounded from the conflicts that are currently occurring. Dr. Souza is a great example of how we take our time as veterans to serve those that are in need. We've heard the statistic, 22 of our fellow soldiers will commit suicide today. Hopefully, the number will be different today, partly because of what the challenge the general gave us. But these are needs that our peers have, and we owe it to them to do these, to serve. If you think about it, our experiences have built us for these challenges today, and the challenges have never been bigger. I would ask us all to use our skills as we move forward. I would ask our retirees, don't stop telling your stories. Unfortunately, this time of conflict that we're in right now is more common when you look across history than the long times of peace. Several of you, your stories are, you understand that. Please continue to tell your stories so that we continue to lead within our organizations. Let me wrap up with a couple of thank yous. I think about this every Veterans Day. May we not forget to thank our family members. My dear wife, Melissa, of 30 years, is sitting here. 30 years ago, when any time there was a hurricane that was coming in, if you're a sailor, that means you go out to sea. Hurricanes are bad for a ship sitting at the dock. So you go out there and you do donuts and you just wait it out. Well, that was actually kind of easy for me. She, as a young 20-something, has to load up the car, board up all the windows, throw the dog in the car, and drive inland. And all the other years of the time, I was gone for 2.5 years of my 3-year tour on the ship. That was the nature of what we did. So thank you to all of our veteran families. And it's certainly not just our spouses, it's our parents. I'm joined by my parents today, Ron and Dee Anderson. My dad, a fellow veteran, a Navy veteran, was a dentist in the dental corps for the Navy. And then he went on to take those skills throughout his life and served a 50-year career of a dental practice right here in Columbus. He and I had a moment the other day. I think we agreed this had never happened before. The United States Marine Corps band was in town. The President's Own was absolutely fantastic. And at the very end, they're playing Anchors Aweigh, and we stood. And we turned and looked at each other and realized it was the very first time in our whole lives that we'd actually been in the same place and stood at the same time. And so thank you, Dad, for your service, and thank you for all that you continue to do to lead our family. So in conclusion, I'll just leave us with this thought. We have a lot of work to do. Our communities need us, and our fellow soldiers need us. There were 165,000 wounded warriors listed in the most recent survey, 56,000 wounded in combat. Sometimes when you hear numbers, they can be intimidating. I will challenge all of us in the room, 56,000 is not an intimidating number. That's a number that we as a country and we as fellow citizens can address. Tonight at 7:30, we will have 100,000 people in the Horseshoe. They will all be fed, they will all have a place to park, and hopefully most of them will be in a really good mood, and it'll be a good night. Kind of pulling for that. But if we can do that for 100,000 people on one night in one city, the thought that we can't take care of our 56,000 doesn't make sense. So let us all accept that challenge to go forward and lead and serve our service members. All right, thank you. God bless, and have a wonderful Veterans Day.
Thank you, Jay. Those are great inspirational remarks. So thanks for sharing those with us, and thanks for the service you provided our country and the service you continue to provide our community here at the Wexner Medical Center. Would ask everybody, let's go ahead and please stand for the benediction by Chaplain Whiteman, and then remain standing for the retrieval of the colors.
We receive this blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Lord, we ask that you make your face shine upon us, be gracious to us, and as we always ask, again and again and again, give us peace. Amen.
Mark time. March. Group. Halt. Left. Face. Present. Arms. Retire. The colors. Order. Arms. Left. Face. Forward, march. Left, left, right, left.
Please take your seats. If we could, let's give a round of applause again for the Army ROTC detachment and the 338th Army Band. Wonderful job. I'd also like to thank our sponsors again. Our Veterans Day sponsor, the team from Nationwide, thank you for what you do. And along with our annual sponsors that also provide support for our day-to-day operations and programming. Big Lots, Battelle, American Electric Power, the Greater Columbus Arts Council, FedEx, and Cardinal Health. Their support makes ceremonies like today's possible while also providing free admission for all who visit our museum on our national holidays. And finally, as a nonprofit organization, the support of our members and donors enhances our impactful programs and exhibitions year-round. By joining, you are eligible for members-only events and a discount at the museum exchange. And we encourage you to talk with our membership team that'll be in the back here today about joining our mission. This concludes the formal portion of the ceremony. I want to thank you again for joining us. We're going to play the Armed Forces Medley, and I would ask, as your service branch song is being played, if you're a veteran of that branch, please stand. Navy. All right, Marine Corps. All right, Army, let's bring it home. Sing our song. We're the army of the brave. Count the free who have marched to victory. We're the army and proud of our name. We're the army and proudly proclaim. Proud of all we have done, fighting for and the army and it's high, hey, the army on its way. Down along with kids, loud and strong. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for attending. Have a great day.